People have asked me, why do you always pick on Fox News? Why do you pick on the women? Why do you pick on them more than you seem to pick on CNN? Well, the reason is this. In psychological operations, which both news organizations are engaged in, Fox News has to take an extra step that CNN does not. The demographics of the people are very different that tune into these networks. Not a giant shock. The young, more liberal crowd that tunes into CNN already come there in an emotional state. Fox News has to take this extra step to get its older, more conservative viewers into an emotional state before attempting to manipulate them psychologically. That's what this is all about. And in today's video, I am going to show you a direct correlation between Fox and CNN as regards a story about Venezuela. Now, there have been floating around these articles about the crisis in Venezuela causing women to flee and be forced to turn to selling their bodies and all this kind of stuff. Well, in this article, I'm going to show you how if you read the article, not already in an emotional state or not already having made up your mind based on the MSM manipulation, you will see something that is totally illogical. Now, I'm going to go through this paragraph by paragraph and show you what they are attempting to do, not just with the syntax, but with these suggested articles to the left. CNN absolutely manipulates its audience as much as Fox does, but they don't need to get their audience into an emotional state first. That's why Fox absolutely has to use the imagery. That's why guys go back over and over and over again. I know a lot of women think it's just because of the girls. Maybe it is for some. But a lot of it is that subconscious emotional flip that happens that men really can't control. It's just part of the biology. And that's why a lot of guys that attach themselves to the belief systems from Fox do so in a way that makes them very angry if you challenge it. I've seen it here in my comment section, but we'll start with the first paragraph here. And I'll link the article, of course, and you can read it for yourself. They speak with pain in their voices and sadness in their eyes. Now, real quick, 8 basic emotions. Anger, joy, anticipation, sadness, disgust, surprise, fear, trust. We talk about this at the psychological operations side. And once we get through this article, you'll see that they have taken 2 ideas and assigned a whole bunch of negative ones to one idea and all the positive ones to another. How they came to be in a situation where they had to, unimaginable, to sell their bodies. Maritza, a certified nurse, made the journey across the border from Venezuela to Colombia 2 years ago, leaving behind her mother and 3 children. Now, here it says she expected to find a job in her field, a nurse, in Colombia. But when doors were repeatedly closed in her face, and even a cleaning job was nowhere to be found, Maritza found herself making an impossible decision. Well, wait a minute. Colombia is supposed to be this capitalist free market paradise. Why were there no jobs? But you see, nobody's going to ask that question because they've already made up their mind based on the imagery. And they throw in cherry-picked quotes from this young woman. To have one guy today and another person tomorrow, she says, of her fall. Not easy and dangerous, but as a mother, you don't think, you do what you have to. And she talks about having a dream here. And, of course, when they mention that, they show, here's this guy trying to set himself up as the savior, a random guy named Juan. Now, what they don't really tell you here in so many words is the age of this woman. Based on the syntax here, we're looking at somebody who's probably about 25 years old, who would have maybe only been a very tiny child when Chavez took power. They talk about no shortages. They talk about not having any need in Venezuela at one time. Well, that time she's talking about was under Chavez. And hear how it seems like she's wasted her education. They're attempting to subconsciously drive home the narrative that the crisis in Venezuela, without giving a cause, is the reason this woman is forced into this horrible, horrible profession. Now, here's something that I had to read it a couple times to pick out. As a certified nurse, 15 days' work only earned her enough to buy a bag of flour. A normal grocery run became a 2-day ordeal, and even then there was no guarantee Maritza could find the items she needed, like diapers for her baby. They would wait outside the stores, given a number, and basically it was a lottery. If they had it, you could buy it. If they didn't, you couldn't. It wasn't a shortage of money. It was a shortage of things to buy. It says you had no choice but to buy whatever was in stock. What's happening in Colombia is there's plenty of shit to buy, but no money to buy it with. That's the difference. And of course, after driving home all of this negative, the first thing they put in caps, we always voted for Chavez, as if that were the reason. A hallmark of living in a dictatorship is where when everything and anything goes wrong, you automatically think the most powerful person in the country is the one responsible for it. When that's not the case. It shows that in Venezuela, much like here, there are a great many people that are misinformed about how their government works and why they are able to do what they do. Try asking the average American about the petrodollar or fiat money or the Fed or any of the things that we have done over the last 50 to 60 years that have completely skewed the financial markets of the world. For years, Venezuelans supported President Nicolas Maduro, who, like his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, used the country's oil wealth to fund social programs. Wait a minute. Back up. Fund social programs. This woman was a trained nurse. She wouldn't have been on social programs. But when the price of oil began to fall, as if that just happened all sort of magically by itself, and the economy to falter, many Venezuelans started to protest the hand that fed them. Wait a minute. Once again, not a recipient of social programs. The woman was a trained nurse, had a job, earned a paycheck. Maritza is among them. Entire family supported Chavez. We always voted for Chavez, she said, blaming both the former leader and the current president for mismanagement of the country that led to the crisis. Clearly having no idea about why the price of oil fell so precipitously over 1 year, where the money went, or how any of that worked. When a country like the United States decides to seize your assets, billions and billions of dollars, and then criminalize doing business with you, and I would really like anyone to take issue with that, having read the sanctions. This is what happens. In the past, there was no hunger, there were no shortages, there was no separation. Her past only goes back to under Chavez. He took power in 98. That was like 20 years ago. She might have lived when, under somebody other than Chavez when she was really, really young. And here in Colombia, where it's hard to imagine, it really is, a country that only survives because the U.S. gives it $500 million a year, no question. Sometimes it's been more. Colombia and Venezuela are about the same size, population-wise. Can you imagine if we had been sending $500 million to Venezuela over the last 30 years, how this might have turned out differently? And now, they go on and they talk about these other people. This is a former attorney that apparently is doing the same thing. And down here, the last thing they leave with is this 17-year-old girl, not even an adult yet, with a 7-month-old, who's also a prostitute. Now, are there no 17-year-old single moms in America that are prostitutes? I'll bet there are. And what would be the excuse there? See, they don't have to manipulate their audience at CNN like Fox does. Because as you get older, and I don't think this is something that would surprise most of my audience, you stop reacting emotionally to everything right off the bat. Now, these are sad stories, yes, but the automatic assumption of the cause is something both Fox and CNN need you to do. They cannot have you thinking about the story critically. They cannot have you looking into it. They cannot have you believing anything other than the official narrative. And when Fox and CNN have this exact same narrative, this is something that should frighten everyone. And amazingly, I don't think this will surprise you either. Look what the Jerusalem Post has out. Sorry about this, having a little bit of an issue with the webpage, but not even in control and already courting Israel. Many people don't know this either, that this random guy named Juan has been in our employ for 10 years, 2009. You'd have to ask yourself a question, why? In 2009, there were no food shortages in Venezuela. There was no economic crisis in Venezuela. There was no mass human migration leaving Venezuela in 2009. Why would we have needed to recruit random guy named Juan unless we had a plan to create that? Most people don't ask themselves, how did the Saudis know to build up a $750 billion war chest to prepare for what happened in 2015? They did. They absolutely did. Had cash on hand, not just assets, cash on hand, $750 billion. And even then, the Saudis took it on the chin. And that's almost gone. If you want to talk about a real dictatorship, look into Saudi Arabia. But the world is starting to see it. This humanitarian aid thing. Random guy named Juan came out today and said that somehow he got the stuff into Venezuela secretly. That's what they want. They don't want anybody looking closely at this humanitarian assistance. They don't want anybody independently verifying that it is just food, that it is just medicine. So I will leave it there. But understand, the reason I speak about Fox News the way that I do is because a lot of these women are not journalists. They are psychiatrists, they are lawyers, and they have studied things like organizational behavior, organizational psychology. They know how to manipulate people in large groups. And they know how they're going to react in large groups. It's psychological warfare at its worst. And that's why I would advise anyone to not watch. If you want to listen, just listen. Either, just turn up the sound and don't watch. But if you do both, you're toast. You're absolutely toast. Your mind will be mush. So, I hope everyone has a great week. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.